Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another Breakfast with Blaha. And today I'm having lean ground beef and mixed vegetables. So I like to do meals like this on camera because it pisses everyone off. It pisses off the vegans and the carnivores both. It's important to make sure that both of these groups hate you because they're both generally morons. So we have vegetables and animals in the same bowl, which basically is just pretty much death, I guess. You know, you're going to die if you eat that. So let's talk a little bit about heavy work and then pump work. So the reason I discuss this is because I'm not a fan of any sort of block periodization. Now people say, but Jason, you do this or that sometimes with the 5-3-1. It's not the same thing. It's not running whole phases of 1 rep range in 3-week blocks on everything, right? It's heavy work that just gets heavier for 3 weeks and then resets, and then hypertrophy work on the backside of it, or even some other heavy work and then hypertrophy work. That kind of fits perfectly with what I'm talking about here, because I'm not a fan of this classic periodization models, and a lot of good coaches today are not. And that comes largely out of concurrent type training and conjugate. And I'm a big believer in concurrent type training. So when we start talking, though, about gaining muscle, there's 3 proposed pathways to gaining muscle. The third one has been found largely not true. There's not evidence for it. People always bring up the third one. They'll be like, well, muscle damage. Even the best experts are saying possibly not. The evidence is weak to non-existent, and there's a real good chance it is not a factor at all. So we can set that one to the side. Sorry, guys who are doing 6-second eccentrics, which that, by the way, has been shown to cause less muscle growth. There's no debate on that one anymore. What are our pathways to hypertrophy? Mechanical tension, metabolic fatigue. All right? Mechanical tension and metabolic fatigue. Now, of course, people will argue there's always going to be overlap with the two because one will achieve the other. Why? Well, as far as the muscles are concerned, on individual fibers, mechanical tension is going up as metabolic fatigue sets in. Right? I don't fully buy that argument, though. And we have the same thing, though, that mechanical tension will obviously induce fatigue if it's replicated enough times. But when we're really looking at it, these are kind of our 2 big pathways to muscle growth. So if you're trying to get as big as possible, and now people say, Jason, this is a strength channel, right? Yep. But hypertrophy raises your strength ceiling, does it not? A bigger muscle has more strength potential, right? We don't get automatically stronger just because we get bigger, but our potential raises. You know, we always say bigger is stronger. Of course, and Louis Simmons likes to argue with that and say, well, no, stronger is stronger. And he is right to an extent. We're talking about inside the same individual who already trains heavy and focuses on maximizing strength. In that case, yes, getting bigger, particularly getting bigger in the right places, is going to make you stronger. So we should be seeking to maximize hypertrophy. You know, and the same thing, you're talking about weight classes. If you're going to be weight class of any sort of strength athlete, you know what? Maximizing hypertrophy is going to make you better. Because any muscle growth is better than body fat in the same weight class as far as strength potential. In other words, we should be trying to get as jacked as possible. So let's talk further about that. All right. If we do heavy work first, and heavy being a relative term, do I mean 1s, 3s, 5s, 6s? Yeah, it can be any of those. But for simplicity's sake, let's call heavy 5s, right? Very simple. Nobody's going to debate with that. Moderately heavyweight. That still has good hypertrophic potential. Again, no one who's going to look at research is going to tell you we can't get really, really good hypertrophy all 5s. Anyone who argues against that to drink some weird bodybuilder Kool-Aid. Okay. The research confirms it. All right, we get good metabolic fatigue. You do 3 to 5 sets of 5 reps with a challenging weight. All right, you're going to stimulate good muscle growth. You're going to have a lot of metabolic fatigue, or not metabolic fatigue, you're going to have plenty of mechanical tension. Right, we're using mechanical tension repeatedly to stimulate hypertrophy. Our issue is the volumes to get true metabolic fatigue, which is another potential pathway to growth, they start to get too high. They get really too high real quick. So how do we bridge that gap? Well, we do pump work afterwards. And when I say this doesn't mean you go from a bench press to a tricep extension or a bench press to a fly. It can, right? It can mean that. It can also mean that you change reps. What do we mean? Perfect example. 5-3-1 on a boring but big template on your bench press or your squat, it doesn't matter. You're going to ramp up. You're going to do 3 sets, progressively heavier sets. It's going to be somewhere in the 1 to 5 rep range at the top. We got heavy work. You got good mechanical tension, right? You can then do back off work with the same barbell lift, 5 sets of 10, and induce a very large amount of metabolic fatigue very, very quickly. Right? That's great for size. It's one example. What else could you do? Well, you could change exercises too. You could come in and say, well, I'm going to do some dumbbells and other stuff for some sets of 10. It will achieve the same thing, right? So we could look at, say, maybe 5s and 10s here. What about just for supplemental work? Let's say you want to take the volumes up a little bit. It doesn't have to be that high. We could do 3 sets instead of 5 sets. All right, perfect example. You come in and do 3x5, 5x5, whatever with a barbell on your bench press, right? You can follow that up with 3x10, 5x10, whatever, on a dumbbell press. Okay, heavy work followed by pump work. You could even then look at that and say, hey, what's my weakest link in there? What muscle got worked the least? Is it my triceps? So I could do a little pump work for the triceps. Because we got good tension on the triceps from the big movement. In fact, you go look at the research on benching. As benching gets heavier, triceps take a bigger load. The higher the percentage of your 1 rep max, the more the triceps work compared to the pecs. So the heavy benching itself probably got some good tension on the triceps, right? Got some good tension. So the idea here is that whatever means you choose to do this, this is historically understood and known. This has been known for decades in lifters. It seems to work really well. If you want to get big, do your heavy work followed by your pump work. The science that we have later to support that anecdote is that, well, the two understood and accepted pathways to hypertrophy tend to be mechanical tension and metabolic fatigue. We can combine these two together. A lot of people don't like to say that because it's real hard to sell periodization programs when people are saying that, but it's very effective and it works. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.